Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name's Andrew Hecox. I'm a software engineering manager at Red Hat, and we're going to talk today about a new subscription service that Red Hat's offering called Red Hat Access Insights. So I want to start with the sort of 50,000-foot view of what this is and what problem we're trying to solve. So we're seeing in the IT industry a real split between companies who look at IT as a cost center that enables, the basic functions of the business, and companies that look at IT as an accelerator for their business that can innovate and create new business models. And we actually recently did a survey, or we didn't do it, Harvard Business Review did, to look at different companies and how they treat this. And the results that we're getting from companies who see technology as a key innovator to their business is that they outperform both in terms of internal and external perceptions of that company's offers. And this goes across a lot of different sectors, not just companies that are in the tech industry. And the reason why we think this is happening is this famous quote you'll see, but processes that used to be manual or mechanical are getting replaced by software. So software is becoming the way that a business can be innovative, regardless of if their core business itself is software. So we are changing the lens in terms of how we look at IT as an innovator, and we are creating more opportunities for the business to move faster. At the same time, we're also creating more complexity. So if you think about open hybrid cloud and this OpenStack here and PaaS here and infrastructure as a service here and network function virtualization, we're able to help, as an industry, we're able to move faster. We're able to help businesses deliver results faster, but we've taken on a lot more complexity than we used to have to deal with. So a couple of stats that I thought were interesting. Carnegie Mellon did a study on public-facing web applications and failures in those applications. They wanted to actually talk to the different departments to find root cause. And they found 80% of the cause of downtime for these applications was either the software itself or the operator trying to get the software to work. So the complexity of these new models really impacts the bottom line. Gartner did a study of their own clients and found that every hour of downtime costs a business $336,000. Right, that's a lot, and when you're having outages caused by the software stack and its complexity, you can have a direct correlation between the complexity cost and the impact that's going to have to the business itself. So traditional way that we'd address this, right, is there's a new technology, we learn about it, we get better at it. CompTIA did a study very recently, and they asked IT leaders, what's the state of where you think you need to be from a skill perspective and where you are today? And they found that 65% of companies said, we are substantially behind where we think we need to be to operate in the environment of the next 3 to 5 years. So what we believe is that certainly training is very important, but as we look at these new models, we can't treat understanding a complex application deployed across both a private hybrid cloud, public hybrid cloud, the same way that we treated guest running in a VMware or on a physical server instance. It's just simply more complicated. So instead of just throwing more people at the problem, we need to find technology that helps us manage this complexity better. So, and this has started to happen. There's a growing field called IT operational analytics, and there's a lot of vendors playing in this space. And they're trying to create tools to make complexity easier to manage in these environments. So if you start at the bottom left here, called descriptive analytics, I would just think of this as monitoring, right? It's something broke, you get an alert on a dashboard. That's obviously not a new thing. Diagnostic analytics. So a great vendor in this space would be Splunk. If you guys don't use Splunk, there's a lot of similar tools out there, but what they do is they help you get all your logs from all over the places, all over your infrastructure in one place and give you a query language to look into that log. That's great. That helps you diagnose things. It's much better than going around to the 50 systems you think might be involved and trying to look at all of those in one place. But it's still just going to help you diagnose something that's already gone wrong. We have a lot of new startups in this next segment, predictive analytics. We're going to say, well, we see this pattern in these logs. We're going to try and mine it for you. Like apply the same intelligence you would looking at your own infrastructure, your own applications, to say, well, we think these patterns tend to correlate with these other patterns. So lots of cool companies doing this. The risk with that approach is it doesn't really know what it's looking at, and it certainly doesn't know how you resolve it. It can just pull that pattern out. So, that again is valuable. It's nice to avoid downtime, but it can't tell you this is what you need to do to actually get out of it. And it can't tell you why you're having it. It's just statistical correlation. So the final segment we have up here called prescriptive analytics is here's what's going to happen, here's why it's going to happen, and here's how you fix it. We think this is the most valuable. I think a lot of these other things, they do help you in the unknown, but they don't really solve the problem that all this complexity is bringing. So if you go up to prescriptive analytics, you have the ability to just say, the system is telling me about an issue, and it's saying, here's what you do to fix it. And I think that's the optimal place. So Red Hat Access Insights is Red Hat's first attempt to solve that problem. It's our first attempt to say, we think this is what prescriptive analytics looks like in a complex environment that you're running in your data center. So how does this work? So the way that we work as a company, right now, if you work with Red Hat, is as you go through the process of setting up your infrastructure, you're going to troubleshoot a lot of things yourself. You're going to figure out how you want to deploy it. And when an issue occurs, you may resolve it yourself, but a lot of times you're going to engage us. Because of this, Red Hat has this expertise where we can say, we've seen a lot of different deployments, a lot of different configurations. These are the high risk, these are the safe ways, these are optimal. And that's added on by the fact that we have in these communities a lot of the core contributors to these projects. So we have this ability to say, this is the right way or the wrong way to do something, this is the high risk or the low risk. So we do this in one-off cases when people work with support, but could we do that as a tool? So if someone discovers an issue, critical issue that impacts their environment, that's our little node here at the bottom, they share that information with Red Hat. So they've done this discovery, we do this validation, we already do this today. Can we take the extra step and try and automate that? Now that we know exactly what the issue is and how to reproduce it and who it impacts, then can we scale that out as a tool that's going to give everyone else the visibility to, this problem occurs in these configs, and here's how we know to fix it. So we're building this on something that we've done a lot. So Red Hat as a company has already solved more than 1 million customer cases, and that's resolved in over 30,000 published known problem and solution pairings, basically. In this scenario, this happens. And not only have we done this over the last 15 years, we also have a huge team, 700 certified engineers that are doing this on an ongoing basis. So this is really a capability that we want to harness to create this connection where as the community discovers issues, everyone that's in that community of customers of ours gets to benefit from that insight. So I'm going to switch to a demo here as long as Wi-Fi works. So this is Red Hat Access Insights. This is, as I said, it's the first version. We're really eager throughout the session. You have questions, please ask me, but also we have a booth downstairs. We're trying to get a lot of feedback of, we get really positive feedback on this basic idea. Let's take what we have, let's unlock the knowledge that we have about good and bad configurations, let's share it out. We're looking for a lot of feedback on, is this the right way of doing it? Are these the types of things you're concerned about? So I'm going to walk through the UI here, but please keep in mind, if you were using this, what would you get out of it and what feedback would you give us to make it better? So we've broken the alerts that we have into 4 sections. Availability, this means you're attempting to do something as highly available, but your configuration isn't. A simple example here, Red Hat ships clustering components, and those actually conflict with Oracle RAC's clustering components. So this is a part of your infrastructure. If you've bothered to buy and set up Oracle RAC, it's for something very important. And so we find customers, by using these 2 different fencing techniques at the same time, they actually, when their cluster needs to do failover, they actually knock out the entire cluster. So really expensive, really critical errors. And what you're able to see here is this isn't a huge treatise on all the reasons this could happen. Red Hat does publish, Oracle in this case would publish exact guides on all the steps, but you need to do 2 simple steps. And we try and pull out just those 2 simple steps and hand them to you so that, again, if you want to research this, there are materials for it, but if you want to just keep your environment up and go back to focusing on other priorities, it should be just that simple. Yeah, please.
Actually, 365 entities in them. Is this just a static portal
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way, the mechanics of it are, every system connects back to our insight, we call Insights engine, but it's a backend that has this database of rules. So all of your systems would connect back to us, share a little bit of metadata about what's installed, what hardware I'm running, and how is it configured. And then we check that against our database of known bad configurations. Yeah, absolutely. So everything in here is tailored only to you. And the way I wouldn't say it is outside of the implementation of this tool, the problem we want to solve at 50,000 feet is there's too much information. We want to tell you what's relevant to you. So everything we've done is to try and get it down to this is only your problem. And furthermore, there might be 10 ways that someone can experience this, but this is the way you're going to. There might be 10 resolutions, different ways of doing it, but this is what we recommend for you. So it's all meant to be very, very tailored. So another example here, we're not limiting this to Red Hat products and solutions. So we have lots of great partners in the industry. We do a lot of mutual support. So this is an example of an issue that we worked really hard with HP. It was very hard to track down. But a certain version of their firmware on certain models was actually causing random memory corruption. So customers come to us because their system crashes, and we're usually the first people that help with that. But through this process, in this case, turned out to be a firmware issue. We don't say, hey, we're only going to find Red Hat bugs and tell you about them. It's really anything that can cause downtime. Anything that costs you money from that perspective is fair game for us. So as we go, we continue to look at anything that's going to be an issue. And you can see here we've tailored this out again. So these, malcolm.redhat.com, one of my guys in the back may have some clue of why we picked this name. They're somewhat random, but this is a demo account. But this represents a physical server, and this is the exact version and the exact hardware that it's running on. And that's what we'd be able to tell you on a consistent basis. Okay. So most problems that we detect, we want to do proactive. So the goal isn't you have an outage and we quickly tell you why you had an outage. We want to keep you from having an outage in the first place. There are some things that are actually very hard to detect in advance. Think of a hardware failure. There's actually some cases where hardware failure can be predicted, but in other cases it may not be. So this is a problem, for example, if you work in financials and you guys do trading, low latency, you have these very high-powered NICs. They offload a lot of functions. This problem could be caused by a loose cable, but it's this kind of subtle problem where if your network goes out, if your system crashes, we want to predict that, but you also have tools to tell. If you have retransmissions happening 2% of the time for a system on a trading floor, you're actually dropping millions of dollars a year in lost profits from those trades, but you probably don't notice it because it's not a huge, severe impact. So where we can detect things proactively, almost all the time we do, but where we have things that cost money that can only be detected reactively, the service also looks for those types of problems. And then we also cover security. So Heartbleed, another example. We have lots of tools. You have lots of tools available where you can say, my OpenSSL package is out of date. You have some tools that will tell you there's a critical CVE associated with this out of date. You really should update it. We want to go to another level to say, well, Heartbleed, not only is that critical CVE Heartbleed, that thing that you're hearing about at eWeek magazine or whatever, but it's also associated with a listening process on one of your servers that is remotely exploitable. So we're going to winnow down from just, hey, there's updates. That's kind of helpful. Hey, there's critical updates. It's better. To your system can get hacked. You need to fix this now. But besides that, we'd look at things like your configuration. So for SSH, you might have standardized on a configuration of SSH. And unless you have people who are tied into the security community who are looking at the news and following that closely every day, you may not realize that a certain configuration has now been hacked. The default SSH has changed away from it, but you've codified a certain process, standard operating environment for you, that is now moving forward through the future, something that the security community knows is vulnerable. Some people have the ability or the resources to have a security expert or security experts following everything that's going on. Not everyone does. Red Hat does. So we want to take that skill set that we have, this awesome product security team we have, and we can look out for those things on your behalf. The rest of the tool, it's pretty simple, right? The focus here is not flashy UI. I hope it's usable, but it's obviously on the rule set itself and the analysis that we can do. So, we have basic system view, basic configuration parameters. You can get emails from it. You can group your systems. You can hide rules. Let's say you know about something, but you think you've mitigated it. You can turn it off. So you're not being bugged by things that you accept the risk or you understand the risk for. We also have the ability for you to see exactly which rules that we have in place. And hopefully if Wi-Fi finishes here, we'll see that list. So that you have a good view of what you're covered for and almost. No, there goes Wi-Fi. So I'll switch back to the rest. No, here we go. And so just to get a sense here of when I say we really want to make sure that we take this deluge of information and tailor it for you, these are all critical issues that we know how to proactively detect. It's a huge list. It's growing, right? There's no one who's going to know all of these issues across all of these domains and be able to check it across all your systems. Like we said in the beginning, it's not a problem that a human can solve, right? You have to solve this with automation. So this list is growing as we learn more and as the service launches, but we think we've already passed the point where it's just reasonable to expect anyone to do something like this on their own. So just to highlight, goal here, obviously we want to reduce downtime, but more significantly to that, we want to take time that you would spend troubleshooting an error message and give it back to you to work on something more strategic. Avoiding downtime is great. It does have business consequences, but usually what's a higher priority from a strategic business perspective is actually moving forward with new projects, new goals. So by making it really easy to understand, really easy to act on, and finding what you should pay attention to, we hope we're giving you back the time to focus on what your real priorities are. And certainly to identify key risks or key threats in your environment before they really come up, right, and bite you. So the technique we use to build this out is as we learn about customer environments through our support, our consulting, our security team, we have the ability to track which issues are hit most frequently, and we just start at a statistically most interesting issues and work our way down. So by going through those 200 or so rules that we've already codified, that actually covers almost 70 or 80% of the reasons why customers reach out for critical cases. So because we have this insight as a sort of this hub in this community, we have the ability to go down and say, it's not just every issue that might happen, but we actually know which ones happen across a very large install base the most frequently. And so we can invest our energy and our efforts towards the things that are most likely to be relevant to you. The current version of this is hosted. There's an on-premise component where the data is sent up. There's also an on-premise management aspect. So for example, if you use satellite, this integrates into satellite. But the hosting itself is where we do the rule processing. And then as we go, satellite is how RHEL is managed in Red Hat's portfolio. CloudForms is how you manage the Open Hybrid Cloud. So we'll also be adding this functionality into CloudForms, looking at not just RHEL, but also OpenStack in that case. The data collection process, so we don't want to cause a problem when we're helping you avoid a problem, so it's a very lightweight process. If you or your organization opens support cases, this is less than 1% of the data that's involved in a support case. You can collect it daily or weekly. Most people actually do daily because it is extremely lightweight, and it's certainly scheduled for off hours, and you can schedule the time anytime you want. As we talked about a little earlier, the prescriptions we give are tailored. They're not generic. They're very succinct, and they're intended for you to act now, not just give you a piece of information where you need to pull some other pieces in, but just literally the steps that you would take. And the security model is very important to us. So we both obviously place a premium on the service itself being secure, but also privacy of your data. So we do a lot of things to make sure that this is safe for you to use. Data is encrypted at all times, both at rest and in flight. We have worked with our product security teams, I think one of the best in the world, throughout the whole process to ensure the code base itself has been vetted for any issues that someone could exploit. We don't retain the data past when we need to use it, so we process it, and then we keep one copy around so that if a critical new issue comes out, we can alert you. After that, all of your data is discarded. And there's also ability for you to control. So if there's certain files or certain patterns that you don't want to collect, you have complete ability to blacklist anything that you send to us. Certainly, if you blacklist certain things, some rules may not be able to run, and we can give you visibility into that, but you have absolute control of what data is sent. The service itself is also opt-in, so this is not something that all of a sudden your servers are going to start talking back to Red Hat. But if it's something that's interesting to you, it's something that you would enable and control. So the first version of this is available for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. That's going to GA next few weeks with RHEL 6.7 and 7.1 support. You'll be able to pull it back to older versions of RHEL 6 and RHEL 7. It's not limited there. We don't have a RHEL 5 version. If that's interesting, please let us know. That's one of the decisions we're trying to make, is how much energy and time we focus on RHEL 5. And what's the relative value? So are you willing to change RHEL 5 if a new offering is made available? And we get different answers there. So we'd love feedback on that. It'll be supported directly in the customer portal. And also in Red Hat Satellite, and that's Satellite 5 and Satellite 6 will have versions 4 that'll come out when we GA. And then a new program that we're going to launch, Red Hat Access Insights for the Cloud, that's going to cover OpenStack, Rev, Satellite, CloudForms, and RHEL, so the entire stack. And that's going to be aligned with RHCI, so that's a bundle that Red Hat already has that sells all those together. And in that case, we'll certainly have a customer portal version. We'll also have management through CloudForms. That's something we're not ready to GA or release publicly yet, but that is something that if you're interested, we'd love to know, because the way we developed this service was through an early adopter program. We just sat down with customers and said, what do you need? And built what you saw today through that process. That's the same way we want to approach the cloud. So the most important thing for us is not what features do I think go into the service, but what customers can we work with that are going to give us the right guidance on what they need. So that'll come out later this year or early next year, but we're looking for people to participate in the early access program. And if you're interested in learning more, we are downstairs in Customer Central. We're way in the back. We've got several people set up to help give demos, answer questions, walk through. And this is also something that you can start testing today. So if this is interesting to you, you can go to access.redhat.com/insights, and that's in the cards we're handing out downstairs, and just set a few systems up. Most customers that we're working with, that's exactly how they approach it. They're going to take a handful of lab systems, validate, does this actually work for you? And if so, then we start to talk about how we scale it out to a larger deployment. So I definitely encourage you, take a look, give us feedback. We're really eager. There's a couple folks on my team that are going to be up here with me if you have questions now. But otherwise, I think that's it. And are there any questions? Yeah, that's a good question. It does not currently take into account EUS, but that is something that we'd like to add to it, and it's something we'd like to add in the relatively near future. So no, but we are aware of that gap, and we will be filling it. If folks aren't aware, EUS is, you can have stable cuts. So if you're at 6.7, we actually backport all the way for 3 minor releases. So 6.7, 6.5, 6.6. We're bringing critical issues into concurrently, and so you're able to stabilize your environment on a release for a longer period of time with EUS. Any other questions?
Satellite configuration. Do your servers talk only to the satellite server and then it access basically as a proxy up to the analytics?
Yep. Yeah, so in the case, what does satellite bring? The way it works, satellite acts as the broker. So your systems know how to talk to the satellite. They know which satellite it is. Each system then is reaching out to the satellite. The satellite reaches back, so it's the broker of that conversation, gets the analysis, and then it's displayed inside of your satellite. Satellite integration brings a couple other benefits. One, you can tie satellite to your SSO, so you don't have to have everyone with a login to the customer portal to see. But two, I think it's really cool, you can tell the satellite to set it up. So in Satellite 5, you can push the packages out. In Satellite 6, you can both push the packages out, and we have Puppet recipes so that you can configure the service and enable it or disable it on a per host basis.
So, is there a disconnect incentive possible?
Yeah, there's not currently a disconnected. I'd love to get your feedback on that. That's something that we've gone a high level of interest in, and so if we move there next, we need to make sure we get it right. The reason that's connected now is actually primarily because it's easier for us to have a single code base to innovate on, and we're very early in our cycle, but we know as it gets more mature, we can productize the back end as well as the front end. So definitely be interested to hear your feedback and use case.
Just as a note, I would be interested in RHEL 5.
Okay.
Support if you do that. But as far as the agents go, when you release new rules, is that an agent update, or are those dynamically delivered as part of the
Right.
activity, or how does that work?
Yep. So because the rules currently are all on our back end, the only reason we would need to update the client for new rules is if we need to collect new data. And for your standard configuration, it's actually extremely rare because we have enough rule set that we know what data comes up again and again. The cases where we've seen where we've needed to add data have actually been exploits. So Turla malware is not very common, but it was a case where the only way you could really tell this was by looking for the existence of some known malware files. But generally speaking, because we do the model where data collection happens and then we do the processing separate, we're able to update new rules without having to change the client itself.
I saw that there was a button in the upper right corner in your demo, rules admin, I think it said. So can you create your own custom rules based on the data that the agent is collecting?
Yeah, no, you wouldn't see that button, but it's a great question. You also cannot switch account numbers, just for what it's worth. That's for demo purposes. We're looking at different techniques to do that. Right now you can't. So maybe if you have a little bit of time afterwards to better understand how you do that, I would love to dig in. It's a fair amount of effort, so it's kind of like disconnected. It's important to us to get it right, not that we wouldn't do it, but as we invest in it, make sure we understand the right use case. Yeah, the current technology is just Python scripts. So it runs on Hadoop. We have a Hadoop backend, and then because we hired a lot of our people to write rules out of our support organization, Python was actually a very simple language for people to jump into. So that prioritized it. We're not using a rule engine in the sense of like a declarative format. As we get to a point where we ship something, we might need to invent that. But we use Hadoop for scaling out large processing and data storage. Yeah, so we don't want to reinvent solutions that our customers already have. In terms of events, though, what are you thinking specifically? Because certainly Splunk does that as format of log aggregation. Is there other things that are interesting there?
Yeah, like authentication events, for example.
Sure, sure.
That's really highly important. Of course, Splunk has access to that too, but how many
Right.
dashboards should somebody need to look at?
Right. Yeah. So I probably can't talk too much about it, but I think the folks in the OpenStack product lines are looking at providing an aggregation point, at least for that product portfolio, and then we would sit next to that. But I don't know that we have any committed stance on that, so the video is cut out there. But I definitely understand the use case. And Insights itself probably doesn't solve that, but doesn't mean Red Hat's not trying to solve that. Yeah, so it's not a running daemon in the sense of you have something always on your systems, but it's a simple cron job. So you install the package, it's an RPM in and of itself, and then it uses anacron, or you can set it to run on its own cron schedule. But it's literally like a 100-line Python script, so nothing fancy, easy to inspect. You can see what it's collecting, and then you can schedule how often and when it runs. But the host is aware that it is, and it pushes out rather than having the agentless approach where some other monitoring service reaches in and grabs something. Yeah.
Does that actual cron job have the ability to update itself as you go along in the future, or will you have to manually do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a feature that you can enable or disable that when it starts, it will go ask, is there a new set of collection rules? It goes back to the home service. So the reason we made that optional is there's a trade-off where you may have vetted exactly what it collects and you want to have to go through an approval or validation process before you collect new things. So it actually disables, it starts off by default. But then, if you think about how something like antivirus software works, you actually expect that to be doing that in the background. You shouldn't have to hit it. So you can enable that option and then it'll check for new rules or new collection rules. The analysis rules are on the back end, but new collection rules automatically at startup. Keith Robertson. Do you remember what sorry, in the back here. Or Ian, there we go. I think the question is by default, does it do the dynamic check? Oh, yes. Yeah, okay. They wrote the code, so yes. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you guys very much. I really appreciate your time, and please reach out and let us know if you have any questions or feedback.